There are two kinds of people in this world: those who see the invisible strings of influence and those who are moved by them. You've felt those strings your entire life, in meetings, in social circles, even in your own family. This isn't about your talent. It isn't about your work ethic. It isn't about luck. It's about a brutal truth a 15th century diplomat named Machiavelli understood. A truth that explains why some people end up leading and others end up following, long before any decision feels real to you. And once you see it, you don't get to unsee it. You want to believe the world works logically. You want to believe hard work pays off, the best person gets the promotion, and great ideas naturally win. Believing in meritocracy is comforting for you. It suggests order. It suggests fairness. It tells you that if you just play by the rules, your turn will eventually come. But you've felt the glitch in that story. You've watched a charismatic but completely unqualified manager get the job over someone far more experienced. You've seen a nonsensical idea gain momentum while a brilliant one was ignored. You've felt that strange, invisible current in a room, the one that pulls support towards someone else and away from you for reasons no one can clearly explain. You probably explained it away. Office politics, bad luck, plain injustice. But what if it's none of those things? What if there's an entirely different set of laws operating just beneath what you call reality? You were taught the world runs on moral logic, right and wrong, fair and unfair. But the uncomfortable truth is that power operates on its own axis, with its own physics and its own unforgiving rules. And most people, including you, spend their lives playing a game they don't even realize exists. This is where Machiavelli becomes unsettling for you. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't promoting evil. He was a diplomat and political analyst living in a time of constant chaos. What he was doing was stripping away comforting illusions, the same illusions you still rely on, to expose the raw mechanical reality underneath power. Here's what he figured out. There is a massive gap between people who understand how power actually works and people who keep believing it works the way it should. The first group understands that holding power has very little to do with being a good person. The second group, probably the one you were taught to belong to, keeps believing that being good, just, or liked is what leads to success. This isn't about intelligence. It isn't about being smarter than others. It's about perception. It's about whether you're willing to let go of the idea that the world follows a moral script. Machiavelli's most disturbing insight was this: what you've been taught to call virtue, humility, kindness, keeping your word, can quietly become dependence. When you rely on being liked, on goodwill, or on other people's sense of justice, you hand your power over to forces you can't control. You make yourself vulnerable to the shifting moods of others, something Machiavelli called fortuna. You probably don't see this as weakness. You were trained to see it as principle. You mistake powerlessness for integrity. Once you understand that distinction, patterns start to appear everywhere around you. These laws have always been operating. You just weren't taught to see them. First, there's virtù, not moral character, but adaptive capacity. In your world, virtue means being a good person. For Machiavelli, virtue had nothing to do with that. It meant adapting your behavior to what the moment demands, being generous when it works, being ruthless when it's necessary. If you change your approach, you aren't a hypocrite. You're responding to reality. Consistency isn't integrity here, it's rigidity. And in a world that constantly shifts, rigidity gets you crushed. Second comes fortuna, not luck, but instability. Love, reputation, loyalty, and public opinion all live under fortuna. They're fickle. They disappear overnight. If your power depends on being loved, you're building on sand. What lasts longer is fear, not hatred, not cruelty, but the awareness of your competence and your capacity to act. Being respected and effective is more stable than being liked. The third law is inevitability. Power flows toward whoever looks like they've already won. You don't support people because they deserve it. You support people because success around them feels certain. Once victory looks inevitable, people align themselves with it. Opposition weakens, resistance disappears, the appearance of power hardens into real power. The game is often over the moment one side is seen as the winner. The fourth law is necessity. You forgive cruelty when you believe it was unavoidable. You resist power that feels random or personal. You submit to power that feels forced by circumstance. Leaders who frame decisions as necessary avoid judgment. Those who look eager to use force become villains. And beneath all of this is the deepest law of all. The real axis of power is self-reliance versus dependence. If you need approval, you've already surrendered leverage. If you need to be liked, you've outsourced your power. Dependence feels comfortable. Self-reliance feels lonely. Most people choose comfort and call it freedom. So why didn't you see this sooner? Because you were trained not to. From childhood, you were taught to see the world morally, good versus bad, fair versus unfair. That lens became your reality. So when someone acts ruthlessly, you judge their character instead of noticing the pattern. You see the person, not the physics. Power relies on that blindness. A leader can't openly admit that their authority comes from perception and consequence. That would destroy legitimacy. So power dresses itself up in morality, in community, in shared values, in necessity. That appearance isn't decoration. It's the mechanism, and your dependence feels like choice. Staying quiet feels polite. Avoiding conflict feels principled. Compliance feels reasonable. That's how the strings stay invisible to you. Understanding this doesn't turn you into something dark. It removes confusion. Power and morality are two different languages. You were taught to speak one, the world responds to the other. That's why outcomes often feel decided before you even realize a decision was made. Not because of fate, because the rules were operating just outside your awareness. The strings were always there. The only question now is whether you'll keep being moved by them, or finally start noticing who's doing the pulling. If this felt uncomfortably accurate, you already know why. If you want to keep examining the dynamics most people avoid seeing, like and subscribe. The strings haven't changed, only your awareness has.